Some devil fruits take on completely different levels of power once you start considering how they would change if they were awakened. Since awakened devil fruits, at least for Logias and Paramecias, change the effect of a devil fruit to now extend to their surroundings. This hugely changes some devil fruits' value, and the best example to me of this is Nico Robin's Sprout fruit. Now, real quick, just before I get into it properly, I want to say if you like the video and you end up agreeing with the points that I make, be sure to just give this video a like and consider subscribing because it helps the channel grow. So thank you, and back to it. So Nico Robin's Sprout fruit allows her to sprout her limbs from anywhere around her, and as we have seen in the manga and anime, this is already incredibly powerful and kind of underrated even, in my opinion. Because of the fact that there's an almost seemingly infinite amount of limbs that she can duplicate, this allows her to sprout so many tiny versions of her limbs that it creates larger structures like wings, or even transforming her into a demon-like creature herself. Now, I'll point out here that it's a pretty common speculation within the One Piece community that what we saw in Wano with Robin's transformation was actually her awakening her devil fruit. But I personally don't think that's true. One, because I think Oda would have made it much clearer and given it more of a spotlight if he was going to actually awaken Robin's devil fruit in that moment. And secondly, because it doesn't particularly behave like a devil fruit awakening. It doesn't make her power extend to a point beyond herself, which again is what we see with devil fruit awakenings. So we already have a weird problem here with her awakening, and it's that her power already affects the area around her. The internal aspect of her devil fruit ability is her sprouting her own limbs. So with that in mind, my theory on what her awakened devil fruit could then be is that it would allow her to sprout limbs that are not her own. This is an ability that would of course be consistent with her current use of her devil fruit. So it would cover the same range as we've already seen her be able to sprout limbs so far in the story. So around the same area that she can cover now, and presumably in as many duplicates as she currently can of her own limbs. Basically, to visualize it simply, imagine if Nico Robin's power that we currently see wasn't just limited to her own body but other people's. Now imagine what that means. Think about the amount of power and the potential that that actually is when you break it down. Nico Robin suddenly being able to duplicate the limbs of the people around her and use them at her own will. Duplicating them within a range from what we've already seen that extends to even the space between ships on the sea, which is quite a large range if you take that scope into like a battlefield. For some examples of how varied this upgraded power would be, let's first look at what she could do with even the crew's limbs, the crew's bodies at her disposal. If she were able to duplicate the Straw Hat's limbs in battle, she would gain access to hundreds of Luffy's Gear 5 arms. She could create 100 Gear 5 Bajrang guns, for example. Or, let's say, 1,000 legs of Sanji to completely emulate who she's fighting with a giant mass Diable Jambe. Now, this wouldn't exactly work for all of the crew, since, for example, it wouldn't work with Zoro since she can't sprout arms with actual swords. But if she could get her many hands on some swords from the battlefield, she could potentially make a 100 sword style attack from Zoro. There's also the additional defense of her power being that she could cancel out anyone's attack being used against her by simply duplicating the limbs of that attack and then using it against them. She could be one of the only people at this point who can cancel out Blackbeard's Yami Yami no Mi without Haki control, for example, by using his own devil fruit against him. I mean, I'm sure at this point you can see just how versatile and how incredibly ranged this devil fruit could become if awakened, and I presume at some point it needs to be before the end of the story for her to still keep up with the rest of the crew as they go on their power-ups. But I do believe that Robin, if she awakens her devil fruit, especially being able to use Luffy's devil fruit ability, it's fair to say that she would immediately jump up to, I would say, behind Luffy in terms of the Straw Hats rankings of power, at least in my opinion. But with all that said, I really want to know if you agree, and especially if you have any ideas or uses that I haven't actually thought of yet for what she could do with her devil fruit if it were awakened. So be sure to let me know below in the comments, and yeah, I'll see you next time.